Story 1. I was a 911 dispatcher in rural Maryland for about 8 years before I quit to take care of my mom. Most calls were pretty standard stuff. Drunk drivers, domestic disputes, the occasional heart attack. But one call still makes my skin crawl when I think about it. This happened back in 2017. I was working the night shift from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. It was around 2:30 in the morning, middle of October, when I got a call from a terrified-sounding teenage boy. 911, what's your emergency? I said, using my standard greeting. The connection was bad, lots of static. I could hear sobbing in the background. We need help, the boy said, his voice cracking. I don't know where we are. I think we're at Mary's grave. Mary's grave was this local urban legend spot about 15 miles outside of town. Just a small old cemetery at the end of a dirt road in the woods. Teenagers would go there to drink or hook up, tell ghost stories about Bloody Mary or whatever. The usual stupid shit teenagers do. Are you injured? I asked, standard procedure. No, but something's wrong. We're lost. We've been walking for hours. The road, it keeps bringing us back to the same spot. I figured they were drunk or high. Typical call for that area. How many of you are there? 4. Me, my girlfriend, and 2 friends. What are your names? I'm Jake. My girlfriend's Melissa, and our friends are Chris and Taylor. I asked for their ages. All 17, high school seniors. I heard what sounded like someone crying harder in the background. Probably one of the girls. Jake, do any of you have any alcohol or drugs in your system? No, I swear to God, we're completely sober. That's what's so fucked up about this. We're not drunk, we're not high. Something is seriously wrong here. I wasn't convinced, but I went with it. Okay, I'm going to send an officer to your location. Can you describe anything you can see? There was a pause and I heard Jake talking to someone else. We can see the cemetery. There's like 6 or 7 old tombstones. There's a big oak tree with this weird carving on it. And there's fog everywhere. I checked our system. There was a patrol car about 10 minutes from Mary's grave. I'm sending Officer Patterson your way. Stay where you are, okay? Don't move. We tried to leave, Jake said, his voice getting higher. We've been trying to leave for 2 hours, but the path just brings us right back to the cemetery. It's like we're going in circles. At this point, I was thinking they were either messing with me or they were definitely intoxicated. Jake, I need you to stay calm, okay? Officer Patterson is on her way. She'll be there in about 10 minutes. Hurry, Jake whispered. Something's out here with us. That made the hair on my arm stand up. I don't know why, but something in his voice, he wasn't joking around. What do you mean, Jake? I asked. We keep hearing footsteps, like someone's walking around us, but we can't see anybody. And we keep seeing this weird light between the trees. I radioed Officer Patterson and told her to step on it. I stayed on the line with Jake, trying to keep him calm. The kids were huddled together by one of the tombstones. Jake kept saying they were freezing, even though it wasn't that cold that night. About 8 minutes later, Officer Patterson radioed that she was approaching Mary's grave. I told Jake help was almost there. Thank God, he said, sounding genuinely relieved. Wait, I think I hear a car. I could hear what sounded like the kids shouting for help. Then Jake came back on the line. We can see the car lights through the trees. We're coming out to the road now. Stay on the line until Officer Patterson is with you, I instructed. A moment later, I heard Officer Patterson through both Jake's phone and her radio. I've got 4 teenagers here, she said. All appear unharmed. I started to feel relief, thinking this was just another prank call. Then Officer Patterson added, they seem disoriented, not intoxicated. I'm going to bring them back to the station. After they were all safe at the station, I got a call from Patterson. Something weird happened out there, she said. What do you mean? Those kids weren't drunk or high. We tested them, all clean, but they're genuinely terrified. And here's the thing, they all have the exact same story. They went to Mary's grave around 10 p.m. They were only planning to stay for a few minutes, just to see if they could scare themselves. But when they tried to leave, they couldn't find the path back to their car. They said they'd been walking for almost 4 hours when they called 911. Maybe they just got confused in the dark, I suggested. Here's the weird part, Patterson continued. Their car was parked literally 20 feet from where I found them, in clear view of the cemetery. There's no way they could have missed it, and they all swear they never saw it. They swear they'd been walking for hours trying to find it. I got goosebumps listening to her. And the boy, Jake, kept saying someone was watching them. The others confirmed it. They all felt like someone was there, walking around them in the darkness. And they all saw the same light moving between the trees. "What do you think happened?" I asked. Patterson was quiet for a moment. "I don't know. Those kids were genuinely terrified. And to be honest, when I got out of my car at Mary's grave, before I saw the kids, I felt it too, like someone was watching me. It was the creepiest feeling I've ever had. The kids were picked up by their parents. No charges were filed. As far as I know, they never went back to Mary's grave again. I've taken hundreds of calls in my career, but that's the one that sticks with me. 4 sober teenagers lost 20 feet from their car for 4 hours, all experiencing the same hallucination, if that's what it was. I've never been to Mary's grave myself, and after that night, I never will." Story 2, I was a 911 dispatcher in Milwaukee for 8 years. Most calls blend together after a while, but there's one I can't shake, even 3 years after leaving the job. It was around 2:30 a.m. on a Tuesday in February. Bitter cold, the kind that makes everything eerily quiet. I was on the overnight shift, and things had been slow, mostly drunk driving reports and a couple domestic disputes. Then I got his call. "911, what's your emergency?" I said in my practice tone. "Someone's in my house." The voice was barely a whisper, a middle-aged man, trembling with fear. "Please help me. I think they broke in through the back door." I immediately started the protocol, getting his address in the South Side, a lower-income area known for break-ins. His name was Martin. I dispatched officers while keeping him on the line. "Martin, where are you right now?" I asked, typing notes into the system. "Bathroom. Locked myself in." His breathing was ragged. "I can hear them moving around outside." "Officers are on the way. Try to stay quiet and stay on the line with me." "Oh God," he whispered. "There's at least 2 of them. I can hear them talking about what to take." I could hear the genuine terror in his voice. Having handled hundreds of break-in calls, something about this one made the hair on my arms stand up. "I'm disabled," he continued, his voice cracking. "I can't run if they find me. Please hurry." "The officers are about 6 minutes out," I assured him. "Can you tell me what you're hearing now?" There was silence for a moment. Then, "They're in the hallway. I can see shadows under the door. 2 pairs of feet." The line went completely silent. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. "Martin," I whispered. "They're right outside." He barely breathed the words. "They know I'm in here. Oh God, they're just standing there." Then I heard it through the phone, a soft, deliberate knock on what I assumed was the bathroom door. Martin started quietly sobbing. "Please," he begged, so quietly I could barely hear him. "They're going to kill me." I checked the computer. "Officers are pulling up right now, Martin. They're entering the house." I heard radio chatter in the background of my dispatch center confirming officers were on scene and entering the residence. After what felt like an eternity, one of them came on the radio. "Dispatch, we've cleared the residence. No signs of intruders. Homeowner can come out now." I relayed this to Martin, who was still breathing heavily. "The officers say it's safe now. You can come out." "Are you sure?" he asked, sounding confused. "They were right here." "Yes, the officers have checked the whole house. It's safe." "Okay, I'm hanging up now," he said, and the line went dead. About 15 minutes later, my supervisor came over with a strange look on her face. An officer had called in with an update that needed to be added to the report. When Martin opened the bathroom door, the officers found something they hadn't fully processed during their initial sweep. The entire house, walls, furniture, every surface, was covered in aluminum foil. Fishing line was strung in complex patterns across doorways and hallways, forming an intricate web throughout the house. There were other makeshift traps and barriers everywhere. The officers said it would have been physically impossible for anyone to move through that house without disturbing the setup or making noise that would have been immediately noticeable. More importantly, the layers of foil and string were undisturbed. No one had been moving through that house except Martin himself. and even he would have had a designated path. There were no footsteps outside the bathroom door, no intruders discussing what to steal, no one knocking. But I heard that knock. Through the phone, I heard it. I've replayed that call in my mind hundreds of times. Was it just Martin knocking to create his delusion? Was it something else entirely? The officers found Martin alone in that house, but something made that sound. Story 3. I worked as a 911 dispatcher in rural Montana for about 7 years. Most calls were pretty routine. Car accidents, domestic disputes, the occasional bar fight. But there was one call that still keeps me up at night, even though I left that job 3 years ago. It was late October, maybe around 2017. I was working the graveyard shift, which was usually quiet in our small county. Around 3 a.m., a call came in, just static at first, then what sounded like labored breathing. I followed protocol, asking if anyone was there, if they needed help. Nothing but that breathing, then the line went dead. When a call drops, we try to get a call back, but there was no answer. The address that popped up on our system was for an old farmhouse on County Road 42, about 20 minutes outside town. According to our records, the property had been vacant for over a year since the old owner died. No active phone service. I remember thinking it was probably just a system error. We got those sometimes. Phantom calls from disconnected lines, usually during storms or when the phone company was doing maintenance. But protocol is protocol, so I dispatched officers Ramirez and Jenkins to check it out. "Dispatch, we're pulling up to the location now," Ramirez radioed about 20 minutes later. "Copy that. Be advised, property is supposed to be vacant with no active phone service," I responded. 10-4, place looks empty, no vehicles, no lights. We'll check it out. I listened as they approached the house, described finding it locked up tight, windows intact, no signs of forced entry. They circled the property and confirmed nobody was around. "Probably just a glitch in the system," Jenkins radioed. "Old phone lines do strange things sometimes." "Roger that. You guys can clear if—" I started to say. "Hold up," Ramirez cut in. His voice had changed. "Jenkins, you see that?" There was a pause, some muffled conversation I couldn't make out. "Dispatch, we're going to need additional units and medical." Jenkins came back, his voice tight. "Possible 1056 at the neighboring property. 10-56 was our code for a suicide." "Can you confirm the situation?" I asked, already typing up the call for backup and EMS. Yeah, Ramirez hesitated. "We were about to leave when we noticed the garage door of the next property is partially open. There's someone hanging inside, not moving, appears to be deceased." I dispatched backup and EMS and stayed on the line as they confirmed what we all suspected. Male, mid-40s, had apparently hanged himself in his garage. According to the neighbor who showed up while police were there, the guy had lost his job and his wife in the same month. Kept to himself after that. Here's the part that still bothers me. That call came from the vacant house next door, where there was no working phone. We checked the records 3 times. That line had been disconnected over a year earlier. The phone company confirmed no calls should have been possible from that address. The detectives figured maybe the guy next door had tried to call for help, then changed his mind. But that doesn't explain how the call came from the wrong house, one with no working phone. And it doesn't explain the timing. The medical examiner estimated he'd been dead for at least 12 hours when they found him. I've tried to come up with rational explanations. Maybe the phone company records were wrong. Maybe someone was trespassing in the vacant house. Maybe it was just a computer error that happened to send officers to the right place at the right time. But sometimes in the middle of the night, I think about that labored breathing on the line. I wonder if what I heard wasn't someone dying, but someone already dead, trying to be found. The department gave me a commendation for following protocol on a dropped call. Said if I hadn't, that poor man might have hung there for days before anyone found him. But I don't feel like I deserve any credit. Something else made that call. I stopped working night shifts after that. Some things you just don't want to think about when you're alone in the dark. Story 4. For 6 years, I handled the graveyard shift at a 911 call center in rural Missouri. Not by choice at first, newest hire gets the worst hours, but I grew to prefer it. Typically quiet, typically predictable. until it wasn't. This happened in January 2023. Snow had been falling steadily for hours and the roads were getting dangerous. I remember thinking it would be a slow night with everyone staying home. Around 2:15 a.m., I was sipping coffee, scrolling through reports, when the first call came in. 911, what's your emergency? Just breathing at first. Then a woman's voice, barely audible. They're inside. Ma'am? Who's inside? What's your location? A crash in the background. Then screaming, raw, primal screaming that made my skin crawl. The line went dead. I tried calling back. No answer. The system showed the call originated from the Oakwood subdivision, but without a specific address, we couldn't pinpoint the location. I radioed it in as a potential home invasion, told available units to start heading that way. 30 seconds later, every single line lit up at once. We only had 3 operators on that night, me, Darren, and Melissa. Suddenly, we had 12 incoming calls. I'd never seen anything like it in all my years. I grabbed the next one. 911, what's your emergency? More screaming, multiple voices this time. Sir, ma'am, I need you to tell me what's happening. Just unintelligible shouting, crying. I hung up, tried another. Same thing. Darren looked over at me, eyes wide. What the fuck is going on? Mine are all just screaming too. Melissa was furiously typing, trying to triangulate locations. They're all coming from the same area, all within about 2 blocks of each other. My supervisor, Dave, burst in from his break. Why are all the lines lit up? Something's happening at Oakwood, I said, grabbing another call. But no one's telling us what. This one was different. A man breathing hard, clearly running. They shot them, he gasped. Oh God, they shot everyone. Sir, who shot who? Where are you exactly? 135 Oakwood Drive. Party at Trent's house. 2 guys came in with guns. They just started. The line went dead. Dave was already on the radio, directing all available units to the address. Possible active shooter situation. Multiple victims reported. The calls kept coming. 12 lines blinking red, people screaming, crying, begging for help. But most couldn't give coherent information, just raw fear transmitted through phone lines. One caller, a teenage girl hiding in a bathroom, managed to whisper, "They're still shooting. Please hurry." Then a call from one of our responding officers. "Dispatch, I'm a block away. I can hear gunshots, multiple, requesting backup and ambulances." For the next 7 minutes, though it felt like hours, we pieced together what was happening through fragments of panicked calls. A house party, college kids home for winter break, 2 uninvited guests who were asked to leave. They returned with guns. The first officers on scene reported chaos. People running through snow-covered yards, hiding in neighboring houses. Multiple victims down in the house and front yard. 4 ambulances en route, Melissa said, her voice steady despite the chaos. State police also responding. Then came the worst call of the night. A young woman sobbing so hard I could barely understand her. "My boyfriend's not breathing. There's so much blood. Please tell me what to do." I tried to talk her through CPR while keeping her location clear for responders. I could hear the wet sounds of chest compressions, her counting between sobs. The officers were nearby but hadn't found them yet. "Keep going," I told her. "Help is almost there." "It's not working," she cried. "Please, he's turning blue." I stayed on with her until officers found them behind a detached garage where they'd fled. The paramedic took the phone briefly. "We've got him, but it's not good. Multiple GSWs to the chest." We later learned that 2 people died that night, her boyfriend and another girl who was shot in the initial volley. 4 others had serious injuries but survived. The shooters fled but were caught the next day at a bus station 2 counties over. Listening to people die in real-time changes you. So does hearing the moment someone realizes their loved one is gone. There's a specific quality to that kind of grief. Raw and unfiltered by social niceties or time to process. It's a sound I still hear in my nightmares. What haunts me most isn't the screaming or even the deaths. It's those first moments when all the lines lit up simultaneously and we had no idea what was happening. Just faceless terror flooding into our call center from a dozen sources at once. Pure chaos and fear traveling through fiber optic cables into our headsets. I quit 6 months later. Couldn't handle the possibility of another night like that one. The thing about 911 dispatch is that you're the first contact with tragedy, but you never see the resolution. You hear the worst moments of people's lives, but rarely learn if they ever recover. You're permanently suspended in other people's emergencies, never quite touching solid ground. I still get anxiety whenever my phone rings more than twice in quick succession. Story 5. I never thought I'd be the one posting here, but after 8 years as a 911 dispatcher in rural Tennessee, I've got stories that keep me up at night. This one happened last winter. Still gives me chills thinking about it. It was around 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in January, the kind of bitter cold night where everything is silent, except for the occasional crackle of my police scanner. I was halfway through a 12-hour overnight shift, sipping coffee that had gone cold hours ago. The call came in from a number I didn't recognize, not uncommon in our jurisdiction. I answered with my usual script, 911, what's your emergency? Nothing but silence at first, then breathing, heavy, labored breathing. 911, do you need assistance? I repeated, already pulling up the location ping. Help! It was barely a whisper, female voice, young. He's in the house. My adrenaline spiked. Ma'am, are you in danger? Who's in the house? I don't know. I don't know who he is. Her voice cracked. I heard something downstairs. I thought it was my cat, but then I saw him. I kept my voice calm while frantically dispatching units. What's your address? Can you safely hide somewhere? 14 Ridgeway Road. I'm in my bathroom. The door doesn't lock. She was crying now, trying to keep quiet. Oh God, I hear him on the stairs. The closest unit was at least 15 minutes out. Too long. Stay on the line with me. Don't hang up. Try to barricade the door with something. I heard shuffling, then a soft thud as she presumably pushed something against the door. He's in the hallway, she whispered. I can see his shadow under the door. My stomach nodded. What's your name? Sarah. Sarah, help is coming. Officers are on their way. Stay as quiet as you can. Then came the sound that still echoes in my nightmares, the slow, deliberate turning of the bathroom doorknob. He's trying to get in, she breathed into the phone, barely audible. I checked the dispatch screen, unit still 10 minutes out. I felt so helpless. Sarah, is there a window in the bathroom? Any way out? No, she whispered. Just a small one. Too small. The doorknob stopped turning. For a moment, there was silence. Then came 3 slow knocks on the door. Sarah? A man's voice called out, deep, almost gentle. I know you're in there, Sarah. I felt sick. He knew her name. Sarah wasn't breathing into the phone anymore. I could only hear her silent crying. Sarah, I've been watching you for so long, the voice continued. Don't you want to meet me? I've come all this way. I muted my end of the call and radioed dispatch to push the units faster. Code 3, then unmuted. Sarah, don't respond to him. Stay quiet. I can hear you talking to someone, Sarah, the man said. Is that the police? They won't get here in time. Then came the sound of something heavy hitting the door. Once, twice. He's trying to break in, Sarah whispered. Please hurry. Another thud against the door, wood splintering. Sarah, look around. Is there anything you can use to defend yourself? Anything at all? I have scissors from the drawer. Good, hold on to them. Another crash against the door. The barricade was giving way. Sarah, listen to me. When he comes through, you run. You hear me? Run and don't look back. Get to a neighbor's house. I can't, she sobbed. I can't move. The final crash was followed by the sound of the barricade toppling. Sarah screamed, a sound so primal and terrified that my blood turned to ice. Sarah! I shouted into the headset. There was a scuffle, a thud, what sounded like the phone dropping. Then, silence. Sarah? Sarah. Nothing. 10 seconds passed. 20, 30, the longest minute of my life. Then a rustling sound. Someone had picked up the phone. Hello, 911, came the man's voice, calm and composed. Sarah can't talk right now. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type notes into the system. "Sir, police are on their way. Whatever you're doing, stop now." He chuckled softly. "I know they're coming. I've been listening." A pause. "You have a nice voice. What's your name?" I ignored his question. "Is Sarah hurt? Let me speak to her." "Sarah's fine. She's just resting. But don't worry, I'll take good care of her. I always do." "Always?" I repeated, trying to keep him talking until units arrived. "This isn't the first time I've visited Sarah," he said, his voice eerily tender. "I've been in her house many times while she sleeps. Sometimes I just watch her breathe. Sometimes I sit on her bed. Last week I even brushed her hair." I felt sick. This wasn't a random break-in. This was a stalker. "Why don't you stay on the line?" I suggested. "We can talk until your officers arrive." "They're turning onto Ridgeway now. I can see their lights." My heart jumped. If he could see them, maybe Sarah still had a chance. "You know," he continued conversationally, "I wasn't going to hurt her. I just wanted to introduce myself properly. But now," he sighed, "now things are complicated." I heard sirens in the background of the call. "I should go," he said. "Wait," I started. "Oh, and about your officers. Tell them to check the basement. That's where Sarah and I will be waiting." The line went dead. When the officers breached the house minutes later, they found Sarah unconscious but alive in the bathroom. Scissors still clutched in her hand. She had a head wound but would recover. The intruder was gone. Vanished. The officers found a door to the basement they described as hidden behind a bookshelf in the hallway. Inside was a makeshift living space with food, water, and a wall covered with photos of Sarah. Sleeping, eating, showering, changing, dating back months. He had been living in her walls for almost a year. We never caught him. The case is still open. And I wonder who he's watching now. Story 6. Been dispatching in rural Vermont for about 8 years now. Most nights it's drunk drivers or domestic disputes. But this one call from last winter still keeps me up at night. It was around 2 a.m. during a snowstorm when the call came in. The caller ID showed a number from an area that barely gets cell service, deep in the mountain roads where GPS is sketchy at best. 911, what's your emergency? I answered, expecting another car in a ditch. The line was mostly static, but I could make out a man's voice, shaky and breathless. I think I hit someone. On Route 7, there's so much blood. I immediately started the protocol, getting his location and dispatching officers while keeping him on the line. Sir, are you hurt? Is the person you hit still there? I'm not hurt, but something's wrong, he said. I was driving home from my shift at the paper mill when this figure just appeared in the middle of the road. I couldn't stop in time. I could hear the wind howling through his phone. The storm was bad that night, visibility near zero with the snow. When I got out to check, there was this woman in a white nightgown just laying there. So much blood on the snow. But when I tried to help her, she looked up at me and her face was... The line crackled heavily. Sir, can you hear me? What about her face? His voice came back, now almost a whisper. It wasn't right. Her eyes were just black, and her mouth was open too wide, like impossibly wide. I'd dealt with traumatized callers before. After accidents, people's minds can play tricks. I figured he was in shock. Sir, is she still breathing? Can you check for a pulse while we wait for help? That's the thing, he said. I bent down to check, and she grabbed my wrist. Her hand was ice cold, and she said my name. She knew my name. A chill ran down my spine, but I kept professional. Officers are about 10 minutes out. Please stay in your vehicle with the doors locked until they arrive. You don't understand, his voice cracked. I backed away, and when I looked again, she was standing. Just standing there, staring at me. The blood was still everywhere, but she was upright with her head, tilted wrong. I heard his car door slam and lock. She's walking toward my car now. Oh God, she's dragging her leg. It's bent backward. Sir, remain calm. Help is coming, I said, though my own heart was racing. She's at my window, he whispered. She's scratching the glass with her fingernails. They're so long, like claws. Then I heard it through the phone, a distinct scratching sound. She's saying my name again. How does she know my name? Sir, wait, she's gone. She just disappeared. His breathing was ragged. No, wait, I see her again. She's standing in the trees now, just watching me. Officer Daniels radioed in that they were approaching the location. I relayed this to the caller. Thank God, he said. I still see her in the trees. She's just standing there watching me. A few minutes later, I heard sirens through the phone. I see the police lights, he said, sounding relieved. But she's still there, in the woods, just staring. I heard Officer Daniels' voice in the background. Sir, are you all right? Then Officer Daniels radioed me directly. Dispatch, we've got a single vehicle pulled over. Male driver appears distressed but uninjured. No sign of any collision or pedestrian. No blood, no evidence of any impact. Checking the surrounding area now. I relayed this to the caller, who was now talking with the second officer at the scene. What do you mean there's no blood? I heard him say. It's everywhere, and she's right there, in the trees. The officers found nothing. No victim, no blood, no signs of any accident. They checked the entire area and the man's vehicle. Nothing was damaged. The official report concluded that the man likely experienced a hallucination due to fatigue and the poor visibility. He was taken to the hospital for evaluation. But here's the part that still freaks me out. 2 weeks later, I was reviewing old calls for training purposes when I noticed something. Playing back that call in the background during those moments of static, there was something else. A voice, barely audible, whispering what sounded like the caller's name. And mine. I've requested a transfer to day shift. Story: 7 years as a 911 dispatcher in rural Missouri, and nothing could have prepared me for what happened last October. Most people think this job is just answering phones and sending help, but we hear things nobody should ever have to hear. It was around 2:15 a.m. on a Tuesday, the kind of night where the calls are usually drunk drivers or domestic disputes. I was halfway through a 12-hour shift, fighting to stay awake with my third cup of coffee when the call came in. Initially, there was nothing but static and what sounded like labored breathing. This happens sometimes. Poor connection, pocket dial, or someone in such distress they can't speak. 911, what's your emergency? I said, following protocol. More static. Then a voice, gravelly, distant, almost like it was coming through a bad radio signal. Help. Basement. They're cutting. Please. The call trace showed an address on Old Miller Road, about 20 miles outside town. That area is mostly abandoned farmhouses and meth labs these days. Sir, can you tell me your name? What's happening? I asked, already dispatching Deputy Carson, who was closest to the location. Blood. Everywhere. They won't stop. Then the voice changed, becoming higher pitched, almost childlike. They're coming back down the stairs now. My skin crawled. In this job, you develop a sense for when something isn't right. This wasn't a prank call. Sir, help is on the way. Can you hide somewhere safe? The line went silent for so long I thought we'd lost connection. Then came the whisper. The circle isn't complete yet. They need more. I radioed Carson. Approach with caution. Potential assault in progress. Possible multiple suspects. Copy that, he replied. ETA 12 minutes. The caller's breathing had become more erratic. In the background, I could hear what sounded like chanting. Multiple voices, low and rhythmic. Are you hurt? Can you tell me how many people are there? I asked, trying to get any useful information. 3 in robes, 1 with a knife. Can't move. Tied down. His voice faded in and out. Please hurry. Then came a sound I'll never forget. A high-pitched scream that dissolved into gurgling. Not the caller's voice. Something else. Sir? Sir, are you there? Nothing but the faint chanting for several seconds. Then, they killed it. The little dog said I'm next when the moon reaches the window. My blood ran cold. I've handled calls about murders, suicides, horrific accidents. But something about this man's flat, defeated tone chilled me to the bone. Carson, step on it. Possible hostage situation. Sounds ritualistic. Already doing 90, he replied. County backup is 20 minutes out. Back to the caller. Stay with me, sir. What's your name? Daniel. I'm Daniel. His voice suddenly sounded clearer, more present. I was just looking for a place to sleep. Thought the house was empty. Daniel, help is almost there. Can you describe? The line exploded with noise, crashing, shouting, Daniel screaming. Then his voice right in the receiver. They saw me with the phone. Basement, Old Miller Road. Tell them. The line went dead. I immediately tried calling back. No answer. Carson arrived 8 minutes later. I stayed on the radio as he approached the house. A dilapidated 2-story farmhouse with boarded windows. No lights visible. Dispatch, this place looks abandoned. You sure about the address? Positive. Caller said basement. Mentioned hostage situation. Copy that. Waiting for backup before entry. Sheriff Mills arrived 12 minutes later with 2 deputies. I listened as they coordinated entry, hearts in my throat. Dispatch, we're at the front door. No response to announcements. I waited, hearing only radio static and my own heartbeat in my ears. Forced entry complete. House appears vacant. No signs of recent occupation. Mills's voice crackled through. Lots of dust, cobwebs, checking rooms now. For 15 excruciating minutes, I listened as they cleared the first floor, then the second. Nothing. Dispatch, locating basement entrance now. House layout is strange. Another 5 minutes passed. Found access to basement through kitchen pantry. Proceeding down. The radio went silent for nearly a minute. Dispatch, ... Mill's voice sounded different, shaken. We've got something down here. Go ahead, Sheriff. There's symbols painted all over the walls. Looks like blood, but could be paint. Some kind of circle drawn on the floor. My mouth went dry. Any sign of the caller? Daniel? Negative. No persons present. A pause. Wait, Johnson found something. More silence. Then, dispatch, we found a cell phone. Dead battery and, Christ, there's a small dog cage with what appears to be blood inside. No animal, though. I felt sick. What about the caller? No sign of anyone. Place feels like it's been abandoned for years except... Mills trailed off. Except what, Sheriff? These symbols look fresh, and there's a life alert pendant on the floor by the circle. Not activated, just sitting there. I checked our call records immediately. Sheriff, the call came from a cell phone, not a life alert system. That's not all. The centerpiece of this circle thing is a knife, ceremonial looking, and there's a chair with restraints empty. They searched the entire property, the surrounding fields, nearby abandoned structures. Nothing. No Daniel, no robed figures, no evidence of anyone being held there except for the chair, the cage, the phone, and the bizarre symbols. The phone was eventually traced to a Daniel Morgan, reported missing from Springfield 3 weeks earlier. Never found. Story 8. Looking back, I never thought my 3-month stint filling in at the County Emergency Dispatch Center would leave me with something I still can't explain. Most people don't realize how mind-numbing 911 dispatch work can be. Hours of routine calls punctuated by moments of pure adrenaline. I was covering the graveyard shift in rural Pennsylvania while my sister recovered from surgery. The extra money helped, but those 2 a.m. to 10 a.m. shifts were killing me. The center was this windowless, concrete room in the basement of the county building with fluorescent lights that gave everyone this sickly pallor. The night crew was small, just me, Diane, the supervisor, and 2 other dispatchers handling a mostly sleeping county. It was around 4:30 a.m. on a Tuesday when I got the call. Most of our overnight traffic was either drunk drivers, domestic disputes, or the occasional medical emergency. This was different. 911, what's your emergency? I said, stifling a yawn. Silence at first, then a small sound. Breathing, shallow and quick. Hello? This is 911. Do you need help? I repeated, sitting up straighter. Hi. Just a whisper, a child's voice. My training kicked in. Hi there. My name's Jessica. What's your name? Another pause. Ethan. Hi, Ethan. Are you okay? Are you having an emergency? His breathing seemed labored, like he was trying not to cry. I think you need to send someone. I can do that, Ethan. Are you hurt? Is someone else hurt? Not anymore, he said, his voice eerily calm. Not anymore. I typed notes into the system, signaling Diane that I might need assistance. Can you tell me where you are? He gave me an address on Ridgewood Lane, a rural area at the edge of our jurisdiction. I entered it, dispatching officers while keeping him on the line. Good job, Ethan. I've sent help. They're on their way. Can you tell me what happened? The man in the attic finally did it, he said matter-of-factly. He finally killed my mom. My blood went cold. I made eye contact with Diane, mouthing possible homicide, while she nodded and picked up another line. I'm so sorry to hear that, Ethan. Are you somewhere safe now? I kept my voice steady. Yeah, he's gone now. He took her with him. The man took your mom somewhere? To the moon. That's what he always said he would do. Take her to the moon where no one could find her. I felt the hairs on my neck stand up. Ethan, are you alone in the house right now? No, he said. I still have the man's dog here. That was unexpected. I thought maybe there was another person, a sibling or someone who could help. The dog is keeping you company? That's good. What's the dog's name? His name is Shaitan, the boy replied. Say that again, honey? Satan? I asked, thinking I'd misheard. Number Shaitan. He pronounced it carefully. The man said it means devil in another language. I checked the dispatch status. 2 patrol cars were about 12 minutes out. Ethan, how old are you? I'm 8, almost 9. You're being very brave, Ethan. Can you tell me more about what happened tonight? The man in the attic has been talking to me for weeks. Mom didn't believe me. His voice was so flat, so empty. He would scratch on my ceiling at night. Mom said it was just the house settling or raccoons. When did you see this man? I asked, trying to piece together if this was a break-in or something else. I never saw him, just heard him. He would whisper through the vent sometimes. Tell me things. What kind of things, Ethan? That Mom was a liar, that she needed to be punished, that soon he would take her away and I could live with him instead. The boy's voice dropped even lower. I told Mom, but she got mad at me, said I was making up stories. When did you last see your mom, Ethan? Before bed. She tucked me in and said she was sorry for yelling earlier. Then I woke up because Shaitan was barking. There was all this noise upstairs in Mom's room. My stomach nodded. What did you do then? I hid under my bed. I heard Mom screaming, then nothing. Then footsteps on the stairs. Really heavy ones. He paused. That's when Shaitan came into my room. He's a big black dog. I've never seen him before. And the man? Did you see him come downstairs? But I heard the front door open and close. Then it was quiet except for Shaitan breathing. The dispatch system updated. Officers were 3 minutes out. Ethan, I want you to stay exactly where you are. The police are almost there. Are you still under the bed? I'm in the kitchen now. Shaitan wanted water. Is the kitchen door locked, Ethan? Are all the doors locked? I don't know. Shaitan keeps staring at the back door. I think he wants to go out. Don't open any doors, okay? Just wait for the police. Shaitan's acting funny now. He keeps looking up at the ceiling. My mouth went dry. Ethan, go somewhere with no windows and lock the door if you can. Like a bathroom. But Shaitan, leave the dog, Ethan. Go now. I heard movement, then a door closing. I'm in the downstairs bathroom, he whispered. Good job. Stay there until the police come in. They'll announce themselves. Shaitan is scratching at the bathroom door, he said, his voice finally showing fear. He's whining. It's okay, the police are pulling up right now. I could hear the officers radioing in. Jessica? The boy's voice had changed, sounding suddenly older. Deeper. Yes, Ethan? He says he's coming back for me next. After the moon, he's coming back for me. That's when I heard knocking in the background. The police at the front door announcing themselves. Those are the police, Ethan. You're safe now. The line went silent for several seconds before I heard the bathroom door open. In the background, officers were calling out. No dog barking, though. Ethan, I said. I have to go now, he said, back to his childlike voice. Shaitan says it's time. The line went dead. The aftermath is all a blur. The officers found the bathroom empty. No boy, no dog. But upstairs they found a woman's body, horribly mutilated. The attic hatch was open, the pull-down ladder extended. Blood trail led up, but stopped abruptly inside the attic. The house had been owned by a single mother named Karen Reese. She had no children. It gives me the chills till this day. Story 9. Back in the fall of 2013, I started my night shift at the emergency call center in rural Maine. The pay wasn't great, but it beat my previous job stocking shelves at the grocery store downtown. 11 years living in this backwoods county, and I thought I'd heard it all. Domestic disputes, drunk drivers, even the occasional bear breaking into someone's garage. But there was one call I received that still makes the hair on my neck stand up when I think about it. It was around 2:30 a.m. on a Tuesday in October. Most nights at this hour were quiet, just the occasional drunk needing a ride home or someone with chest pains. I was halfway through my thermos of coffee when the line lit up. 911, what's your emergency? I said, stifling a yawn. There was silence for a moment, then a woman's voice came through, so quiet I had to turn up the volume. There's someone in my attic, she whispered. I sat up straight. Ma'am, can you get to a safe location in your house? Maybe lock yourself in a bathroom? I can't move, she said. They're right above me. If I move, they'll know exactly where I am. I pulled up the call details on my screen. Name, Ellen Morrow. Address 237 Pinewood Lane. I typed in the code for a possible intruder. I'm sending officers to your location, Ms. Morrow. They'll be there in about 10 minutes. Can you stay on the line with me? Yes, she breathed. Oh God, they're moving again. I could hear it through the phone, a distinct creaking of floorboards, slow and deliberate. Do you live alone, Ms. Morrow? I asked, trying to get more information while keeping her calm. Yes, I've lived here for 30 years. Never had anything like this happen. The footsteps stopped. Then came a sound that made my stomach drop. 3 distinct knocks, directly above where she must have been sitting. They're knocking, she whispered, her voice breaking. They're knocking right above my head. How do they know exactly where I am? I checked the dispatch screen. The closest patrol car was still 7 minutes out. Ms. Morrow, is there any way someone could have accessed your attic from outside? Maybe a window or... No, she cut me off. The only way into the attic is through the pull-down ladder in my hallway. I would have seen anyone come in. And I checked the ladder before I called. It's still pushed up and closed. The knocking came again. This time I could hear it clearly through the phone. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. They're taunting me, she said. Officers are almost there, Ms. Morrow. Just stay on the line. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold. A voice, faint but clear enough that the caller couldn't have been imagining it. It was coming from the attic. Ellen, the voice called softly. It sounded distorted, almost like it was being played through an old radio with poor reception. Ellen, I've been waiting for you. Oh my God, Ellen whispered. Did you hear that? I had, and it wasn't something I could explain away as house settling or pipes knocking. Ellen, I'm coming down now, the voice said. I heard what sounded like the attic ladder being pulled down, the hinges squeaking. They're coming down. Ellen's voice was panicked now. How is this happening? The ladder was closed. Ms. Morrow, is there anywhere you can hide? A closet? Under a bed? I was trying to keep my voice steady, but the fear in her voice was getting to me. I can't move, she whispered. I'm frozen. Oh God, I can hear footsteps in the hallway. The patrol car status updated on my screen. Officers are pulling up to your house now, Ms. Morrow. They'll be at your door in seconds. They're getting closer, she said, her voice barely audible. The footsteps are coming toward my living room. I could hear her breathing, fast and shallow. The police are at your door, Ms. Morrow. They're going to knock any second now. As if on cue, I heard knocking through the phone. That's them, I said. That's the police at your front door. No, Ellen said. That's not my front door. That's my living room door. It's right here and it's opening. I heard the creak of a door opening through the phone. Ellen, the voice said, much clearer now. I found you. Ellen screamed. Then the line went dead. I immediately radioed the officers. Be advised, caller is screaming. Call disconnected. Possible intruder inside. Approach with caution. 2 minutes later, the officers radioed back. They'd entered the house and found Ellen Morrow sitting alone in her living room, phone still in her hand, staring at the doorway. There was no one else in the house. They checked every room, closet, and yes, the attic. The pull-down ladder was firmly closed and showed no signs of recent use. The officers reported that Ms. Morrow appeared confused when they questioned her. She insisted someone had been in her attic and had come down to her living room, but couldn't describe them. The officers found no evidence of any break-in or intruder. We got 3 more calls from Ellen Morrow over the next month, all with the same story. Eventually, her nephew moved her to an assisted living facility, suspecting early onset dementia. 6 months later, the new owners of her house called 911. They'd heard footsteps in the attic, followed by knocking directly above their heads. When officers arrived, they found nothing, except the attic ladder pulled down in the hallway, despite the owners insisting it had been closed. I quit my job at the call center 2 weeks later. I still don't know what was in Ellen Morrow's house that night, but I know what I heard. Story 10 spent 5 years as a 911 dispatcher in northern Michigan. Not something I planned on doing, but the pay was decent and jobs were scarce in our county. Most calls were mundane: car accidents, domestic disputes, medical emergencies. You get used to the rhythm after a while. This happened during my 3rd winter on the job, February 2018. We'd been hit with back-to-back blizzards, and the university about 20 miles from our dispatch center was on winter break. Campus was practically deserted except for international students who couldn't afford to fly home. It was around 2 a.m. when the call came in. I remember because I'd just finished my coffee and was contemplating whether to make another pot. 911, what's your emergency? I said, stifling a yawn. Nothing but static for a few seconds. Then a voice, male, early 20s, with an accent I couldn't quite place. Eastern European, maybe. Please help. His voice was barely above a whisper. Someone is in my apartment. He has a knife. I sat up straight, suddenly wide awake. Sir, what's your location? Birchwood Hall, apartment 312, campus housing. His breathing was erratic. I'm hiding in the bathroom. I think he knows I'm here. I immediately dispatched 2 campus officers while keeping the caller on the line. Officer Davis and Jensen were already patrolling nearby due to a false alarm at the science building. What's your name, sir? I asked, trying to keep him calm. Alexei, please hurry. There was a crash in the background, like furniture being overturned. Oh God, he's trying to get in. Alexei, officers are 2 minutes away. Can you stay hidden? Yes, but... His voice cut off. Alexei? Are you there? I could hear shuffling, then what sounded like scratching against the phone. My heart was racing. He's at the door, Alexei whispered. I can see the doorknob turning. The line went eerily quiet. All I could hear was his shallow breathing. Officers are entering the building now, I assured him. Stay on the line with me. Davis radioed in. Dispatch, we're at the 3rd floor. Which apartment again? 312, I replied. Caller is hiding in the bathroom. Suspect reportedly armed with a knife. Copy that. The next 30 seconds felt like hours. I could hear the officer's footsteps through Alexei's phone as they approached his door. Campus police, Davis shouted. We're coming in. I heard the door burst open through both the radio and the phone line. Dispatch, we're in the apartment, Jensen reported. Place is completely trashed, signs of struggle everywhere. The bathroom, I reminded them. The caller said he was hiding in the bathroom. Copy, we see him now. He's huddled in the corner with his phone. Relief washed over me. Alexei, the officers are there. You're safe now. But something was wrong. I could still hear Alexei breathing on the phone, but Jensen was describing seeing him in the corner of the main room, not the bathroom. Officer Jensen, I said. The caller said he was hiding in the bathroom. Can you check there as well? I heard Alexei's voice through the radio feed. He's in there. He has a knife. Behind the bathroom door. My blood ran cold. The voice on my phone line hadn't spoken. Officer Davis, be careful, I warned. Through the radio, I heard the bathroom door being kicked open. Bathroom clear, Davis called out. Then chaos erupted. Drop the weapon! Drop it now! Jensen shouted, scuffling sounds, a scream of pain. Officer down! Suspect is armed! Davis yelled. Need immediate backup! What's happening? I demanded, but no one responded. The radio exploded with activity as more officers were dispatched. Meanwhile, the phone line with Alexei remained open, but silent except for that same steady breathing. Alexei? I tried one more time. No response. 10 minutes later, the situation was contained. Officer Jensen had suffered a deep laceration to his forearm, but would recover. The suspect, Alexei Petrov, a 22-year-old exchange student from Ukraine, had been subdued and taken into custody. The investigation revealed that Alexei had stopped taking his schizophrenia medication 3 weeks earlier. He'd called 911 himself, convinced someone had broken into his apartment. In his delusional state, he destroyed his own living space, then directed the officers to the bathroom where he believed the intruder was hiding. When they found no one there, something snapped. He pulled a kitchen knife from his pocket and attacked Jensen. But here's what still haunts me. Throughout that entire incident, from the moment the officers entered the apartment until backup arrived, Alexei's phone line remained open to me. Yet he wasn't talking to me anymore. He was interacting with the officers. So who was breathing on my end of the line? The official explanation was that the connection remained open, but Alexei had put the phone down. The breathing was either radio interference or ambient noise. But sometimes at night, I still hear that steady, patient breathing in my dreams. The university allowed Alexei to continue his education after a psychiatric evaluation and with strict monitoring of his medication. I transferred to traffic management 6 months later. Couldn't handle the night shift anymore. I've taken thousands of emergency calls in my career, but that's the only one where I'm not sure who or what was actually on the line with me. Thanks for watching. Don't leave before leaving a like to this video. Also hit the subscribe button to support my work. And as always, have a horrific nightmare, my dear.